Ecclesiastes chapter 12. I'm going to start reading at verse 10. The preacher sought to find acceptable words, and what was written was upright, words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the words of scholars are like the well-driven nails given by one shepherd. And further, my son, be admonished by these. Of making many books there is no end, and such much study is a wearisome of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments. What I want us to look at this morning is this question: is everything that God nailed down being pulled loose? Now, last week we talked about religion. How people are starting to take a very loose opinion of what religion is all about. You know, we've been talking about Sunday morning, what is pure religion? Going and taking care of the widows and the orphans in their distress, keeping oneself unspotted from the world, and then of course not showing partiality. All of this is about true religion. But yet folks today want to mechanize religion. They're wanting to change it. They're wanting to make it something different than God intended for it to be. And so we have that problem in our society today. And we looked at that last week. Now, today we're going to look at morality. God has nailed down certain aspects of morality. And yet, people today have kind of uprooted this whole foundation of morality. And so what we're going to look at this morning is it been pulled loose? What God has nailed down. George Washington, I think he's a name that we're all familiar with, once said, morality cannot be maintained without religion. Now I want you to think about that. The way our religion goes is the way our morality goes. Now let me use this illustration. We've talked about this before. Let's say there is no God. If there is no God, then there is no standard of morality. We're no different than the beasts of the field. They don't have a standard. They can brutally destroy one another. It's not illegal. There's no laws keeping them from tearing up a victim because they have no law of standard or no standard of morality. If we do not have God, we're no different than they are. In fact, it's hypocritical to say we have law. You know, that's kind of hard to stomach, but that is the way that it is. Jean-Paul Sartre, who is a French skeptic, once said, everything is indeed permitted if God does not exist. And that's true. That's exactly what I just said. If God doesn't exist, if there's no God, then there's no morals. If there's no morals, then we can do what we want. We can live the way we want to. Now, if you follow the mainstream of the liberal, the leftist, you'll see that that's exactly what they're trying to do, is to destroy morality. And I'm going to talk about the reason here in a little bit. 59%, now this shocked me a little bit. 59% of the American people say belief in God is not a precondition to being moral and having good behavior. In other words, that morality is not the basis of a God-taught religion. You don't have to believe in God to be a nice guy. Well, yeah, that's true. But the bottom line is, what are you if there's no God? I mean, if there's no standard of behavior. But 59% of the American people say belief in God is not a precondition to being moral. In other words, you can believe in God and be immoral. God has nailed down morality. We act like there's a question mark by things like homosexuality, abortion, fornication, adultery, pornography, that it's all up to an individual. As an individual, I have the right to make up my mind concerning these things. I don't have to worry about any certain standard. I don't have to worry about any certain rules of behavior. But as we see, God has nailed these things down. God, in Romans 1, talks about those that men that burn in their lust one for the other, and women that do the same. And He is not condoning it. He is condemning it. Abortion, He talks about very frequently. The life in the womb of the mother. Fornication. I mean, common sense tells you that's not right. Adultery, same thing. Pornography. It's amazing the inroad that pornography has in the lives of individuals now. It's a very serious problem. And these one-eyed smart books, or smart whatever you call the computers, has led us into these inroads. Speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Now, remember, 59% of the American people are confused. They say that belief in God is not a precursor to being moral. What does God say? I am a holy God. The word holy means set apart for holy things, for righteous things. I am a holy God. If I'm a holy God, you are to be a holy people. Has that changed? I mean, yeah, indeed, these words were written probably, 2,000 years ago, close to it. Has that changed? No. God is still a holy God, and He expects His people, in this case the church, to be holy, to be set apart, to be used for God's own purpose. Holy means to be set apart, prepared for God, pure, sinless, upright, or moral. God sets the standards for morality. As Mr. Sartre said, if there is no God, then there is no standard of morality. First Corinthians 10, the Apostle Paul is talking about some of the stories of the Old Testament. Some of them, and most of them, we're very familiar with. But he talks about them crossing the Dead Sea, or the Red Sea, excuse me. He talks about the fact that as they crossed, of course, God led them, and Christ. Now, one of the things that he says in verse 6, these things became our examples to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. Here he's talking about the time whenever they began to have these vile affections toward the morals of God's people. Their holiness became debauchery. They began to worship idols. And of course, God destroyed the idol and then destroyed many of these people. Why? That they could learn not to lust. And then he says to those folks in Corinth, these things were written for your admonition, that you may not lust like they did. God took care of them for their lust. He'll take care of us for ours. Romans 1:21, because although they knew God, they did not glorify Him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. I want to tell you something. Anytime I read 1 Corinthians 1, and really 2 Corinthians 10, it's almost like they're looking ahead to the year 2021. It's almost as if they're prophesying what's going to take place in these years. Because that's what's happening. The American people are going more and more like the old Israel that gave in to their desires and stopped following God. Morality. 2 Peter 1 verse 4, we are partakers of the divine nature. You know, do we fully appreciate what that's telling us? If you are a Christian, you are a partnership in God's nature. That means you're going to be different from the world. You're going to be set apart differently from the world. You're going to act differently. You're going to talk differently. You'll dress differently. Everything you do will be different than what the world does. That is if you are partakers of the divine nature. Now let me tell you something. Just because you're baptized does not mean that you are a partaker of the divine nature. You can be baptized and still give in to the lust of the flesh. Baptism can have no effect on you. A lot of people are baptized just because it was a formula. Something that maybe mom wanted them to do. Something that maybe the wife wanted them to do. But understand something. Those kinds of baptisms will not save you. They will not make you a part of the divine nature. You know, some people say that we as members of the Church of Christ, we believe in water salvation. Well, yeah, I do. In 1 Peter 3:21, and I figured that water also now save us. You see, I believe in water salvation because that's what the Bible teaches. But I also believe that water salvation goes a lot deeper than just the water. Because my heart has to be right to be a part of the divine nature. I have to start thinking like I'm in the world and start thinking like I'm in Christ. That's going to change up this moral position totally. That's going to make me holy like God is holy. Now, Not according to the flesh. We don't live any longer according to the flesh. 2 Peter 2 verse 10. That's what's changed. It's not the flesh that appeals to us. Not according to the world. In 1 John chapter 2, John talks about that. All that's in the world is the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the pride of life. These are of the world. These aren't of God or of Christ. 1 Peter 2 verses 11 through 12, I want to read that. If you would, turn over there with me. 1 Peter chapter 2 verses 11 and 12. I want you to notice some things about this. Beloved, I beg you as sojourners and pilgrims, in the world in which we're living, we are nothing more than sojourners and pilgrims. We're just passing through. The problem of it is, we don't want to build tents. We want to build skyscrapers so we don't have to leave. But we're going to. Everyone is going to leave this planet. And one day this planet is going to be completely destroyed, burned up. We are just passing through. If we're Christians, we're built tents. We're nomads. Abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. You know that struggle when you want to do what's right, but sometimes that which is wrong just eats at you, just gnaws at your very fabric. Having your conduct honorable among the Gentiles, that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may by your good works which they observe glorify God in the day of visitation. That's not in this life, by the way. The day of visitation is in the judgment. They're not going to get it. The life you live right now doesn't make one bit of sense to those that are not Christians. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You know, living where I live, I get to watch what's going on out on the highway and then at the store. And it's like people, especially on Sundays is what I'm talking about, it's another day to them. They can't figure out nor understand why we're at church when we could be fishing, could be boating, skiing, wakeboarding, whatever we want to do. We could be doing all that stuff. But we're in church. They don't understand that. They don't understand why we're so particular about our values and about what's right and what's wrong. They don't get it. They don't have those same values. And you know, it's really tough trying to live amongst that kind of an environment, or to work in that kind of an environment. Of course, we are in the world, but Jesus said, you're not of the world, because the world doesn't think like you, doesn't act like you. Sometimes that puts you in a little bit of a predicament. Sometimes you have to make choices that's not going to be popular with those around you. That's where the courage comes in. Folks, now as much as ever, we need to take a stand for morality. Larry gave me a paper, it's called the Epoch, I believe. Comes from California. There's an article in there written by an ex-KGB. He came to the United States in about the late 70s. And he revealed to the United States the plan. In this plan, they were going to destroy the foundation of America. That's the communistic plan, to destroy America. They destroy the basic tenets of our country. Morality was on that list. Did I mention family? That's what we're going to talk about next week. Religion, education. You tell me, folks, that's not happening right now. In fact, this KGB agent said he was surprised that it was happening so quickly. The problem of it is, not only is some people encouraging this kind of thing to happen, others of us are sitting by in the corner watching it happen and doing nothing about it. Which is worse? Abstain from fleshly lusts which war against your soul. Therefore gird up the loins of your mind. Be sober and rest your hope fully upon the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts, as in your ignorance, but as He who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Because it is written, be holy, for I am holy. Now, the idea of girding up your loins, that doesn't make a lot of sense to us. It's like putting a belt on, kind of. But then you take your belt and you take your long flowing tunic that you're wearing and you bring it up and tuck it in your belt and you're ready for battle. Girding up your loins is another way of saying get ready to fight. Get ready for the battle. Peter's telling these Christians, you're fixing to be in a battle. And they were. It wasn't going to be very long before Nero, Redivivus, or Domitian, is going to begin his persecutions following those of Nero's back in 60 AD. Nero used Christians to light his garden. He would impale them and then set them on fire as torches. Now, folks, that was the life of the first century Christians. They were literally running for their lives and trying to worship in places where they wouldn't be caught. But if they were caught, they wouldn't deny it. They wouldn't deny it. Just like Polycarp, who was caught. They were trying hard to get Polycarp to deny Christ. He was an old man. His response to them was, I am 83 years old and I have never denied my Lord, and I'm not going to do it now. And according to the historical accounts, as the fires were lit under Polycarp, he was singing hymns. Do you think we've got it pretty easy? I think we do. Of course, the question is, how long is it going to be like this? Joseph Stalin. You remember him? America is like a healthy body and its resistance is threefold: patriotism, morality, and spiritual life. If we can undermine these three areas, America will collapse from within. Patriotism. There was a picture I saw on the television the other day that showed men and women burning the American flag. Morality. Well, you know where we are with morality in our world today. And spiritual life. Spiritual life. You know, for a Christian, that ought to be second nature. But I guarantee you there's a lot of people who call themselves Christians doesn't have a clue what spiritual life is all about. He said, in these three areas, America will collapse from within. In this article that the KGB wrote, people started to worship humanist reason instead of God. Now, you don't want to talk about something that's scary. You know what humanism is? If you know what humanism is, raise your hand. If you've ever read the Humanist Manifesto, raise your hand. It's a scary book. It's not really a booklet, it's just a bunch of ideas. Basically, it's let people alone, let them do whatever they want to do. Getting almost to that jungle attitude. People started to worship humanist reason instead of God. Reason is believed to be able to lead people to the path of happiness and morality. Not God. Reason. What does the Bible say about man's own eyes? When a man does what he wants to do and what is right in his own eyes. Just because it's right in my eyes don't mean it's right in God's. Reason does not lead to happiness, and it does not lead to morality. Judges 17 verse 6, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Oh, this guy really got me. His name is Jules Antoine Castagneri. Listen to this. Listen to what he says. Beside the divine garden from which I have been expelled. You know what the implication of that is? That garden of God, he's been kicked out because of his beliefs. I will erect a new Eden. At its entrance I will give a flaming sword into his hand, and he shall say to God, thou shalt not enter here. God, you're not welcome. Is that what I'm hearing today? God's no longer welcome in people's homes. God's no longer welcome even in some churches. God is no longer welcome in our society. God is not welcome. God, you stay out. Now I want you to think about it. Next week, we're going to talk about family. We're going to talk about how that family is being attacked. You know, this morning, I would love for each one of us to take a very good look at our lives, at our courage. Take a good look at the response that we are giving to the immorality and all of the problems that has assaulted our nation. want you to take a look at yourself. Are you a part of the problem? Or are you part of the solution? We can't just sit by and do absolutely nothing. I'd encourage you, first of all, folks, look at your life. If you're not where God wants you to be, then you need to get there. However you need to do it. If you're not a Christian, then you need to be baptized, having your sins washed away. If you are a Christian, but you have not lived in such a way that a Christian should live, then we can pray for you. Get your heart right with God. Again, do you want to be part of the problem or part of the solution? Take courage. Stand up. Boy, together we stand to sing.